What would England's 26-man squad for the World Cup look like if Gareth Southgate could only pick English players from the Championship? Well, in today's video, I've tried to go ahead and solve that conundrum by building my personal England 26-man squad from only Championship players, and it's harder to do than you think. I will be doing an updated version of this video just before the World Cup goes ahead and kicks off, so if there's any players that I've left out from today's video, make sure to get a case from them in the comments down below. All they need to be is English and currently playing in the Championship. So what's important when you are building this side is trying to get a balance of a full 11, and I've tried to do that as best as I can with this England squad. So I've built it in a 4-2-3-1 formation, and I've tried to give the sort of adequate depth to each position, but we'll go through this team one by one. Starting out with the goalkeepers, I'm not going to lie, there is quite a bit of competition for top English goalkeepers. For me personally, one player who gets in there right away, I think, is Freddie Woodman. More clean sheets than any of the Championship goalkeepers so far this season, right up there with the best save percentage as well, and just generally speaking, a really solid shot stopper. Previous winner of the Championship Golden Glove as well, good with his distribution. So yeah, no questions for me, Freddie Woodman goes ahead and gets in there. The next one, I've gone for an experienced pick, and I've gone for John Ruddy, someone who I think has somewhat gone a little bit under the radar so far this season for Birmingham, but given their solid start so far, I think it is important that you get a sort of mix of youth and experience in this squad, and someone like John Ruddy I think would be fairly useful. And then as my other goalkeeper, I had to go for Fotheringham in the end. I think that based on the last 18 or so months in the Championship, he's probably been the best goalkeeper over that time span. I know he had that moment of madness at the weekend against Blackpool as he was sent off after the full-time whistle, but judging it off a consistent period, I think he's going in as my goalkeeper. So in no particular order there, those three goalkeepers for me are the ones that I think would be on the plane. But I am leaving some pretty big goalkeepers out there, and when I come to do this video again, these goalkeepers might have changed, you know, form varies and things like that, and I could be swayed on a couple of those picks, but generally speaking, like, I'm happy with those three goalkeepers. Right back was a pretty tough position to pick as well, and there were one or two big players who I had to omit from this position. Coming up first in the right back spot, I'm going with Ethan Laird. For me personally, I just think the guy's absolute mustard. I think that QPR landed a great deal to go ahead and get him. Really jealous that Preston didn't manage to get him in the end, as we were also interested. But I think in terms of a progressive fullback, someone who can play as a right back or further up as a right wing back, I think he's got absolutely everything to his game. And then this second pick, because I was pretty settled on bringing Laird, I was between 2, 3, maybe 4. Jones, Isaiah Jones at Borough, obviously worth a shout in here. Max Aarons, I feel really harsh to have left out, but James Bree has been so good for Luton so far this season. It was a bit of a coin toss between them. Bree gives you that bit of versatility. He can play as a centre-half on the right-hand side in the back three, can play as a wing-back or a traditional full-back, and so far this season, he's got a higher expected assists than any other full-back in the Championship. His creative numbers have been absolutely excellent, and generally speaking, he's been really solid as well. So feels harsh to leave Aarons out, but I think I'm settled on those two for the time being as my right backs. Coming in at left back, a little bit more clear cut. I don't think there's as many options at left back. First of all, I've gone for Max Lowe of Sheffield United. When fit, arguably the best in the league in that position. And then as the understudy on that side, I've gone for Ryan Giles. Despite Middlesbrough's inconsistencies during the start of this season, I do still rate Giles quite highly. His creative numbers have been really positive this season, and he also gives you a few other options as well. You can play him as a wing back, you can even play him as part of the forward three as well. Just gives you that burst of pace and a real quality left foot as well if you are looking for a delivery. So goalkeepers and fullbacks, that's what I'm working with, but it does feel a bit harsh that I've left some players out of that. In that centre-half, we have plenty of options, and I had to make some pretty big omissions from this position as well. First up, I've gone for Harwood Bellis. Been really impressed with him in at Burnley so far this season. I think the more we've seen him in the Championship over these last few loan spells, the better he's gone ahead and got each time. And so far this season at Burnley, really composed on the ball, fits into this Vincent Kompany system, and also a top defender as well. My other two defenders for this right-hand side, I've then gone for Rob Atkinson at Bristol City and Rob Dickie at QPR. I wanted to take at least one of the QPR centre-halves, and I was a little bit torn between Clark Salter and Rob Dickie. QPR fans, you'll have to let me know in the comments down below. Who would you personally rate higher? Would you have them both on the plane? But if you only had to pick one, who would you say has had the better season so far? I've seen a little bit more of Rob Dickie, so in the end I sided with him, and Rob Atkinson I just think is a top defender. Also gives you that little bit of a goal threat as well, as I found out as a Preston North End fan. In on the left-hand side, this may be a little bit of recency bias, but I've gone for Sirkin in at Sunderland. I've been really impressed with him so far this season. Spurs have been sniffing around potentially bringing him back as well. Obviously came through the youth ranks at Spurs, but has done so well in the Championship so far, and also gives you that bit of versatility. Happy to play as a left back on that left hand side or as a centre half as well. I think that versatility is quite important. And then in as my final centre-half that I've gone ahead and brought, I've gone for Jacob Reeves in the end of Hull City. I get that at times this season he's not covered himself in glory. Hull have been really poor at the back, but I think if you surround him by better players, you will see a player then that will absolutely shine. I still think there's loads of pedigree about a player like Jacob Reeves. Don't get me wrong, there were quite a few other players that I was umming and ahhing about over for this position. You know, a few of the Millwall boys could have easily got in here. Jordan Storey maybe, given how well Preston have been defensively, but I think if you're going for a back four, you probably look towards other options. But in the end, those were the defenders that I settled on. Once again, a few names that were quite harshly left out though, but I am on a limited squad here that I can pick from. Into my CDMs, these are the players who I'm looking to sort of control the tempo of games, look to get on the ball, pick the ball up from the centre halves, and I think that one player who suits that role down to a T is Matt Grimes at Swansea. Consistently right up there in terms of the passing statistics for the Championship, and I think if you're going for a sort of possession orientated style of play, Grimes absolutely has to be on the plane. And then someone as his understudy, I've gone for Ben Whiteman at Preston North End. I think he plays that role pretty well, to be honest with you, in terms of keeping the ball ticking over, a threat from set pieces as well, which is also helpful in international football. So them two as a pairing for sort of that holding midfield position, I'm fairly happy with. Central midfield, absolutely loads of positions, but first name on the team sheet for this position is Josh Brownhill. The guy has been absolutely electric for Burnley this season. Can play in a variety of positions, can play as a holding midfielder, someone who's a little bit more box to box, or someone who's really advanced. Obviously we've seen some absolute worldies over the years in terms of when he goes ahead and unleashes it, and yeah, Josh Brownhill, maybe even the captain of this side, he's that good and has been so far this season. Next up then, I've gone for John Swift. While West Brom have had massive inconsistency so far this season in terms of a creative midfielder who can just unlock a back line with a pass like that, I think that is John Swift right down to a T. And another one, can be effective from set pieces, can play as a holding midfielder or a little bit further up as that advanced man as well. And then as my last midfielder in this role, I've gone for Baker in at Stoke City. In terms of a long shot and effort from outside the box, someone who gives you a little bit of everything in midfield, I think he has been a unbelievable signing for Stoke, getting that deal over the line. I think that he's only gone on to get better each time I've seen him, really. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with those options in midfield, but once again, this is a position where the Championship is pretty stacked, and I've had to leave some big players out, a few youngsters I was considering for this position as well. But in the end, for the time being, these are the players that I'm settled on. Right midfield, we do have plenty of options in the Championship. The first name coming in, I've gone for Jed Wallace. Once again, quite similar to to John Swift, there have been those inconsistencies with West Brom players this season, but in terms of consistent quality in the Championship, there's no way in hell I was ever going to leave Jed Wallace out of this sort of squad. And then as my understudy on that right-hand side, I've gone for someone who can play down the middle or off either flank that I just think is so effective on transitions, and that's Antoine Semenyo in at Bristol City. If you catch him on the right moment, I think he can be absolutely unstoppable. And in this sort of squad where you have those options, someone who can play out wide or through the middle, I wanted a little bit of everything in this squad, and I think he just gives you that little bit of X factor on the break. In off the left-hand side, there was one player who I was surely going to take. That's Nathan Tella in at Burnley. Really impressed with him so far this season. I've been impressed with quite a few of Burnley's sort of technical wide players, but Tella especially, a player who's got an eye for a goal, 5 so far this season in the Championship. Brilliant on transitions, and also quite a skillful and tricky winger as well, you know, capable of beating people in one-on-one situations. And I also think the same can be said for my other left midfielder. Gone for Grady Garner. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that last season I wasn't massively hot on Garner, if I'm being completely honest. I think that we've seen him being more consistent in the Championship, and at times last season I did feel as if there were moments where he would flatter to deceive. But so far this season, even with West Brom's inconsistencies, I think he's been getting back up to his best in terms of his creative numbers, dribbling and things like that. He's one of the best in the Championship for that, and just for that electric pace, the ability to stop the ball like that and just dazzle his way past 2 or 3 men. Grady Garner, another player who has that X factor who I just had to bring. One of the first names on the team sheet though is in at attacking midfielder, and it was of course going to be Chris Willock. The team really, I'm envisaging this team being a real thing, and I'm imagining it being built around Willock. I think if that's the case, you go on and do really well in this hypothetical Championship tournament. But yeah, Willock so far this season, one of the best creators in the Championship now, and yet still feels at times he goes a little bit under the radar for whatever reason. But unbelievable talent, first name on the team sheet for me. Now, as this backup attacking midfielder, I was toying with a few different names. Now, I'm not totally settled on the option that I have gone for in the end, but I'm happy to be sort of debated about this one, because I do feel as if this secondary cam position is up for debate. In the end, I've gone for Alex Pritchard in at Sunderland. His underlying numbers have been really impressive so far this season, and whenever I've caught a glimpse of Sunderland, I've really quite liked the look of him. I think that he was probably a little bit better utilised when Sunderland had those 2 fit strikers with Stewart and Sims both firing, and they've had to slightly adapt things since they've been out of the squad. But with Pritchard sort of floating in the space behind those 2 strikers, I like what I saw then, and given the team that I've set up here, I think he can be pretty effective in this setup. Strikers, I had plenty to choose from. In the end, these were the 3 that I went ahead and settled on. Coming up first of all, I've gone for Keinan Davis in at Watford. If you watched the start sub-sell that I did the other week, we had quite an interesting one come up between 3 top Championship strikers. But for me personally, in terms of all-round game, I think Keinan Davis is really one of the best at this level. Can be that traditional target man that can sniff out a goal and things like that, but also has the ability to drop in, get involved with the play and things like that. And I think that that's an area of his game which is quite underrated really. So for an all-round game, he's definitely in the squad. I think I had to get at least one of the Luton boys in. In the end, I went for Carlton Morris. I was toying with the idea of also bringing Adebayo, and you know, you're entitled to do that as the 3rd striker. I just thought that maybe with Davis coming as well, he offers maybe a similar sort of skill set to someone like an Adebayo. Kind of Morris gives you that little bit of something different. But I've been really impressed with both of them so far this season, particularly Morris, who I think has instantly taken to this Luton setup and maybe even elevated the game for them in the final third. Then this last striker spot was a little bit controversial for me, because there were probably 5 names that I was between in the end, and I went ahead and changed this one at the very last minute. this may be a bit of recency bias from me, but I've gone for Tyrese Campbell in at Stoke City. I obviously saw him against North End at the weekend, and I don't get me wrong, I do think it's taken him maybe a little bit more time than I first initially thought it would have to have gotten over that serious injury that he obviously had to come back from. You know, when he initially came back, didn't quite look himself, looked a little bit clunky with his first touch and things like that. But what I saw at the weekend was a player who looks to be getting back to that level that he was first showcasing when he was absolutely on fire for Stoke before he picked up that serious injury. And I just think, in terms of the profile of strikers that I've got here, as that third option, I wanted someone that was a little bit different to my other two options, and I feel like Campbell is exactly that. Someone with just that cultured left foot who's capable of those unbelievable sort of finesse moments. Campbell just offers you that little bit of class in the final third, and when he's on it, I think he's unstoppable. But there we have it, guys. That is my 26-man squad that I'd personally select of Championship-only players. I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Are there any obvious names that I've gone ahead and missed off from this list? Who are they? Let me know about them in the comments down below and make your case for them, because before the World Cup kicks off, I will be doing an updated version of this, and we'll see just how much my opinions go ahead and change from right now. But as things stand, I think that right there is my 26-man squad. There we have it though, guys. That will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do get involved with the conversation down below. Thanks for watching though, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.